Greetings, travellers, and welcome to episode 59 of the Innsmouth Book Club. You join us in a rather breezy, cold January Innsmouth, and as you can see, once again, we've brought you to the Gillman House, and we're going to go inside and be speaking to our special guest in a moment. I'm one of your guides, Rob Hoyton.
And I'm the other one, Tim Mendes. Yeah, it's bitterly cold again, isn't it? January in Innsmouth, it's not exactly tropical.
No, well, it's not tropical at the best of times, to be fair? But we have a touch of the South Pacific on occasion, but then perhaps that's not a good turn of phrase.
Yeah, I've touched too much of the South Pacific sometimes, I think.
So just one quick mention before we go in. We spoke about it last time, of the forthcoming Innsmouth Literary Festival. As we said, planning and preparation is underway for we believe it's the first UK sort of Lovecraft convention of this kind. So we're looking forward to inviting some guests along, having traders and some panels and perhaps some performances and gaming and other things going on. As I say, once we've got more concrete details, we will be letting you know about that.
Yeah, I believe it is the first sort of literary festival, more like the Comic-Con convention-y type things. I know there's a film festival, isn't there, in London? And
yes, yeah.
Well, I think that's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah, there's been sort of similar M.R. James type events. I think there's one coming up this year as well. Actually,
I believe so. Yeah.
But yeah, we'll be going off the back of the fact that it's 100 years of Weird Tales this year, 1923. So that's going to be our hook, if you like, to hang the festivities on.
Festive fish, yes.
All right, let's get inside and tread the stairs up to room 428. So here we are, and here's our guest for today, Charles Phipps. Hey, Charles, how you doing?
Hey, how are you doing?
Nice to see you. Thanks very much for coming in to visit us. Is this your first time in Innsmouth?
Oh, I've been here a few times before. I first came in the Call of Cthulhu tabletop adventure, The Raid on Innsmouth, and its predecessor. Later, I came back during the Dark Corners of the Earth. After that, my visits became a bit more sporadic. I showed up in Ruth Emre's The Innsmouth Legacy, checked it out, and its sister city, Oakmont, in the Sinking City, and spent some time here in the post-apocalyptic wastelands during my Cthulhu Armageddon days.
Nice.
A seasoned visitor.
Oh, yes, they know me well with my Tommy gun.
I was going to say two great choices of video game there. So
yeah, I think Dark Corners of the Earth for most people still stands out as their favourite. Yeah. I mean, it had its problems, didn't it? I guess. But,
yeah, I don't really see major problems. It was more of it was of its time.
That's one of those games I think that would do well for a remastering or a re-release there. It really had the level of detail and fidelity to, and I'm saying the tabletop game necessarily versus the Shadow of Innsmouth, though that's there too. But there was just more of it versus the seemingly split between the new Call of Cthulhu game and the Sinking City, which seemed to take both parts of Dark Corners of the Earth and split them in half.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So you had the sort of stealth investigative stuff at the beginning, and then you had the action stuff towards the end, didn't you? It was a great game. There was supposed to be a sequel, but the company went bankrupt, unfortunately. Yeah. Which is a real shame, because apparently there was supposed to be a trilogy, but there was a direct sequel in the works, which is a real shame.
There's also the fact that the ending to the first game kind of puts some of the more casual, non-Lovecraftian, depressing, horrific ending to maybe off the game as a continuing series. No real sense of triumph in that ending.
I loved that. I thought it was a proper Lovecraftian ending. You know, if they're not dead or insane at the end of it, it's not proper Lovecraft.
Well, I agree and I disagree there. There's a reason that I'm fond of a certain couple of professors who managed to triumph over adversity, even.
Yeah, true.
When in the face of the Yog-Sothoth.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. My good friend Seth Skorkowski, who runs a review of Call of Cthulhu games, among others, on his channel, he had a very interesting argument for how to run Call of Cthulhu games and saying like, yes, some DMs think keepers think it's the best way to end a Lovecraftian game is either suicide or death. And it's like, the rules will kill you, but you don't do that deliberately. Let the players do it themselves. It will be much more satisfying.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, no one's going to want to play a game where it's certain death as an outcome, whatever you do. I mean, I felt a bit that with the latest Call of Cthulhu game as well. Like, I didn't really have much choice about what was going on. So from a gaming experience, you want to feel like you've got some sort of input or some sort of idea about what your fate might be, and can you influence it, even if it's just an illusion.
Well, that's actually an interesting controversy in my books there, because I do occasionally have the bad review was like, this isn't horrific enough there. And even in all my intros, I say like, my books are a bit more of the pulpy side of Lovecraft, the Dunwich Horror, the Dream Quest of Unknown Kadeth. And like Brian Lumley's Titus Crow there, my guys don't quite run away from a bad smell, even when they probably should.
Yeah, I wanted to bring that up because you say that in I think it's the introduction to the Tales of Yog-Sothoth anthology that you edited. I think it's that one, or it may be the Tales of the Al-Azif.
Oh, it's
one.
both, because they're the same series.
Oh, is it in both?
Yeah.
But you say in that you want to go more with the because you mentioned Ramsey Campbell, and you say that you were more of the Brian Lumley than the Ramsey Campbell.
Yes.
In terms of
I remember my first exposure to Lovecraft was, in fact, the Titus Crow series, which gave me a very skewed opinion of that. I picked up The Burrowers Beneath from my college library, and I just went through it before I could find the actual Lovecraft there. And Titus Crow and his friend Henry just managed to do some absolutely wild 70s things there that I'm not sure were inspired by drugs, but pretty sure they were.
They had that transition series. It starts with The Burrowers Beneath the novels. They go very psychedelic.
Yes. I recommend them. And I'd rather think that Brian Lumley doesn't need my endorsement before we go talk about my books there. I will say they have a TARDIS with the Death Star ray.
Yes. The De Marigny's clock. Yeah.
Yes.
I've got to say, because I got into him as a kid through the short stories. I've still got it, the paperback with the complete Titus Crow of all the short stories. So I got into them first. I think I prefer those to the novels. I don't know why.
I do as well. They went over the top, and I mean by miles. But I'm actually going to say a fun little endorsement for another friend of mine there. I got into horror writing because of my friends in Crossroad Press, which is run by David Neal Wilson, who also does occasionally a bit of Lovecraft. And they do the Brian Lumley Titus Crow audiobooks.
Right.
Nice.
I've not heard those. Wow.
Nice.
So was Lumley your first introduction to weird fiction, or have you been into it before that? Were you into gaming before the fiction, or the other way around?
Well, I definitely was aware of Cthulhu and his and H.P. Lovecraft's Mythos via the tabletop games there. I've been a dedicated tabletop gamer since I was 12, basically. And, like most young teenage boys, the edgier the better. So Warhammer, Vampire the Masquerade. Call of Cthulhu was, I didn't quite get it when my teenage years there, but in college it's like the light went off after I read Lumley and went to the original Lovecraft. It's like, oh, I get it. You're supposed to be eaten.
Yes. Yeah.
It's supposed to be hard and not quite triumphant there, and that's what makes it good there. Ironically, it was probably my introduction to noir fiction and detective fiction that there was a synergy that resulted in me finally, quote unquote, getting it. I got Stephen King, and then I got Lovecraft, and it's like, well, this is just two really great authors, and I now fully am on the horror train, particularly the Orient Express.
Nice. Yeah.
And I suppose it is that thing with well, certainly Lovecraft, the Lovecraftian approach, it almost is that you think of traditional fantasy as the good guys win. The white-robed wizard comes along and saves the day, and the guy gets the princess and all that kind of stuff. But I think it is this sort of noir sensibility mixed with horror, or with Lovecraft, we could say science fiction almost as well.
Well, when I said my introduction to the pulp side of H.P. Lovecraft, which again has always existed, in addition to the Dream Quest and Dunwich Horror, there's the Strange Case of Charles Dexter Ward and so on. And there are places where they don't win precisely there. There's no fanfare and triumph and Star Wars medal scene there. But while you know the bad guys are going to win eventually because it's a dark horror story, the old ones will rise, the world will end. It doesn't have to be today.
Yeah. And of course, from a writer's perspective, you got to have some sort of continuity, right? If you're going to be writing a series, which I suppose, the closest Lovecraft came to that was Randolph Carter.
Yes.
But then if you look at, Robert E. Howard after that, obviously had his Conan and his Cole and his Solomon Kane. There's a continuity of character. If everyone goes mad at the end of every story, you've got to reinvent something new every time.
Yeah. When I wrote Cthulhu Armageddon, which is, as someone said, either Fallout meets H.P. Lovecraft or Mad Max meets H.P. Lovecraft, I came with the idea that I wasn't going to just throw the entire Lovecraftian genre out the window, so to speak, there, but I drew heavily on Robert E. Howard as kind of an idea of how my Wasteland protagonist, John Henry Booth, would react to the Mythos. It's not that the Mythos has destroyed humanity. It's not that the Mythos isn't absolutely objectively terrifying, but you can die on your feet or die on your knees. That comes across. I think certainly in the pacing as well, and the action. It's very fast-paced sort of novel. Yep. And I was interested again in your forward to that. You sort of nail your colours firmly to the mast and say, I think it was interesting because there's two things. One, we've got that mashup of genres anyway, which we all like with Lovecraft. So you've got Mad Max.
Oh yeah.
I was reminded of the Cursed Earth from the Judge Dredd kind of setup as well.
Yeah, I got 2000 AD vibes from it.
Oh yes. I definitely think that touches into that sort of area as well there. I also write cyberpunk among my other genres from Lovecraft. And, well, let's just say I draw from the British sensibility of it quite a bit as too.
It's a very dystopian place in some ways, Britain, but perhaps that's a place maybe we best not go just now. But also within that, I was thinking within Lovecraft, you get all these genres. So we've got pulp Lovecraft. We've got what we might call the sort of Thomas Ligotti end of things.
Nihilism.
Yeah, we've got more cosmic Lovecraft. Yeah. It seems there's room in the Lovecraft sandbox for everyone.
Oh, yes. I also think that how a person reacts to it can be a little different from, nebbish 1920s academics. And we know that Randolph Carter was kind of the original Lovecraftian Gary Stu, who goes through the entirety of the mythos that Lovecraft is, befriends the ghouls, and then tricks Nyarlathotep at the end before escaping Azathoth at the center of the galaxy.
Yeah.
And, he gets screwed in the end, though. Lovecraft isn't unfair to his protagonist. It all catches up to
his misery.
Yeah. But he doesn't quite lose either. It's just we never see the ending of their conflict, so to speak.
Yeah.
But when I came up with the ideas for my Cthulhu anthologies, which are the Tales of Cthulhu series, that's mostly me, but also David Hambling, who you've had on here as an interviewee before.
Yes, we did. Yeah.
He did the Book of the Yig entirely by himself there. We've kind of made a little gentleman's agreement that the two of us will basically pay for one anthology when we get the money, and invite everyone else we know to do involved. And we'll share in the wonderful pulpy adventure detective fiction interpretations of H.P. Lovecraft that we put there. Though we've had quite a few terrifying stories as well. Generally, the theme in both the Tales of the Al-Azif and Tales of Yog-Sothoth and Tales of Yig is, there's a monster. We go, probably we'll lose some people along the way. Maybe we'll win, maybe we won't. But, our heroes, and I do use that term loosely with some of them, will at least punch back a few times, even if it, bounces off that blubbery, deep one flesh.
Yeah.
And some of them are hilarious, like David Neal Wilson's Cockroach Suckers.
Yes, I was going to say, is that the one he had in the Yig one? or I can't remember which one
I
it was
think
in.
I'm afraid they all kind of run into me there.
Yeah,
I
I
think
can't remember which one it was in, but that was brilliant. That was hilarious.
Oh
Yeah.
yes. My favorite story actually isn't my John Henry Booth, Wasteland Warrior stories in those anthologies. I did enjoy adding to them. I originally only intended to write one Cthulhu Armageddon book, and then I wrote a second one because I got a story in my head there. But ended up writing more for the anthologies, and now I'm writing a third Cthulhu Armageddon book. You see, I always had the idea that you can't have the same character keep running up against the machine and not getting torn to shreds.
Yeah.
But with the anthologies, I just, couldn't help but enjoy making the little short story encounters. But what I was getting back to before my digression, my favorite story probably is The True Name of God, which is entirely new characters and set in the Crusades, where, I have an assassin protagonist and he deals with someone has encountered something very unchristian and unmuslim. And he's trying to figure out how his cosmology deals with, Yog-Sothoth is real. Is Yog-Sothoth God? And other spiritual questions while, monsters are eating people.
But that's part of the character development. And I know Lovecraft is not someone who is big on character as such, and, is mostly about mood and everything. But I think as a writer, for me, it's more interesting to have a character that you can develop. I think part of that development is how your character deals. I like one thing you said in Cthulhu Armageddon. There was this idea of our human myth being just like a shadow of the truth, the reality of the old ones and everything else. And how do people react when they discover that? I think that's an interesting thing for a writer to explore.
Oh, yeah, definitely. There's a definite thing I try and pursue with all of my books there is that I definitely write a lot of action and I write humor, which less so in my Cthulhu books, obviously. But with a lot of action, that doesn't mean I need to write stupid books.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that because a lot of my stuff does have humor in it, but it's that sort of, it's not intentionally comedy. It's just the British way of looking at things. Oh, yeah. We tend to deal with a lot of adversity through humor.
I would actually argue that if you really understand humor is supposed to come from a reflexive reaction to things being terrible.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. Any humor that doesn't come from a place of like incisive observation that things have gone seriously awry isn't actually that funny.
No, that's just so true. So true. Yeah.
I was just going to say, because Tim and I have both put anthologies together, and I think what we both tend to do is look for a sort of genre mashup or a theme for the anthologies. So how do you approach your anthologies? What's your criteria for selection? What to you makes a good, if it's a Lovecraftian anthology, what makes a good Lovecraftian story?
Well, I do definitely believe there's a lot of room for Lovecraft to be multiple interpretations, especially since trying to imitate Lovecraft's own specific style perfectly is just both unfair to Lovecraft and unfair to you as an author.
Yeah.
It's a thing, yes. And I would also go further to say that Lovecraft himself would not be fond of that because he was a guy who was the original pioneer of open source intellectual property.
Yes.
True.
Yes.
He and his people were like, you can use any of my stuff and I hopefully can use any of yours, and we'll just see about how that works out there. And it worked very well with Robert E. Howard as he took a lot of the cold cosmic sort of things there, and Lovecraft occasionally made nods to the Hyborian Age as well there, including some of Robert E. Howard's darker books and so on, like the Book of Ibon. I'm probably mispronouncing that, but the best part about being an Appalachian and a Lovecraft is that any way you pronounce it is wrong. Humans cannot pronounce it.
If there's one thing we're known for, especially on our Clark Ashton Smith podcast, it's mispronunciation. So you're in good company there.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. But definitely with the speaking of Lovecraft anthologies and my regular books, there's like when I was trying to write Cthulhu Armageddon, I was, okay, if I just try and write a regular Lovecraft story there, it's just going to be one drop in the ocean, and I probably won't do it very well there. So what will distinguish me that, well, I'll take post-apocalypse because it occurs to me everyone's talking about how Cthulhu will eventually destroy the world, but who really has written about how he does it and what happens next?
True. Yeah.
The description in the Call of Cthulhu is that humanity will come wild and free like the old ones, and is like, why not just use post-apocalypse dystopian fiction as a reflection of that?
Yeah.
Cthulhu has risen, and he won against humanity in like 5 minutes. Now, humanity's in little pockets and survival groups, and it's a Wild West kind of thing, and we'll see how that works.
Yeah.
The second book is, I think I call The Magnificent Seven versus Cthulhu, which is a bunch of very player character sort of guys who have been around the block a few times there, trying to stop the freedom of the last old one, and one by one they start dropping off.
Nice.
And now my third book, The Tree of Azathoth, is going to be my post-apocalypse noir, where John manages to find his way into the Dreamlands, and he's ended up in Randolph Carter's dreamed up Boston, except now it's a big, huge metropolis sort of noir city, and dealing with all the kooky darkness of being a noir detective film in a city where that deep one prostitutes are on the side.
Oh, my word.
Nice.
Okay, that went off topic there. But with the anthologies there, I invited some of my friends, all of whom are more pulpy kind of adventurous, but still horror capable authors. David Niall Wilson is a very acclaimed horror author himself. He won the Stoker Award twice, but he loves doing quirky, humorous piss takes, I suppose is the best word to say it, versions of Lovecraft. Like, essentially, what if the protagonist who encounters a Lovecraftian monster is a dumbass redneck from the middle of rural eastern United States? And, it's like, I don't know anything about the Necronomicon, except maybe, I used to prop up my desk. David Hambling, he does his Harry Stubbs books, which are about a boxer in the 1920s there who never quite encounters the Mythos straight to the vein, so to speak, but manages to move around the edges. And that's probably why he's able to survive long enough to do sequels.
Yep.
And then there's Matt Davenport, who definitely wants to just go full pulp Indiana Jones kind of hero versus them. I love that sort of thing there. And I try and do a little balance. I create framing stories and give each time I do these anthologies a central theme and idea to run through it. In Tales of the Al-Azif, it's the history of the Necronomicon, about how Abdul al-Hazred finds the information he needs to create the book in the first place, and his horrific death, and how the Necronomicon's inspiration finds its way into multiple hands across time until it reaches the post-apocalyptic Cthulhu Armageddon age, which I totally didn't do deliberately, so I always got to write the ending story. And the sequel, Tales of Yog-Sothoth, is about let's just say a female cultist from the Crusades who is infected with Yog-Sothoth's true name, and it drives her to try and summon him and end the world, and same sort of thing that Wilbur did in Dunwich. And she's immortal. It follows encounters with her across the stories right up until they finally put her down well after the world is destroyed and there's no real point.
I was going to say that I think of the ones you wrote for those, I think that one was my favorite, with the Migo on the spaceship.
Oh yes,
yeah, it was like aliens, but Migo instead. I thought that was absolutely brilliant.
Oh yes, I mean, Lovecraft predated a bunch of UFO and saucer culture sort of stories there, and I was like, why not incorporate that into it, even if it's a little post-apocalyptic too there. And the Migo are great for that.
Yeah.
Yes.
I never got around to doing Delta Green, but I think KSCM did something similar as well there by saying the Migo were actually behind the Greys. It was just humanity being too stupid to realize it.
Yeah.
Well, it is interesting when you start tying in Lovecraft with modern UFO cults and the idea of, well, what's the series? Ancient Aliens, the guy with the hair and all that.
The guy with the hair, yeah.
It's a bit like Robert E. Howard's Serpent People, and then suddenly we end up with lizard people conspiracies and all that kind of thing. Fiction becomes fact.
It's very funny you bring that, because yesterday I wrote an entire chapter about the lizard people aliens in my superhero thing there. And the joke being that the protagonist is Jewish. So he's like, man, why do people think we're related to these guys?
Yeah,
nice.
it's
nice.
It seems uncomfortably it looms uncomfortably large at times, a lot of times, which actually ties in with something else I wanted to ask you. I understand you're very keen on representation in your work. Well, we know what Lovecraft's views on certain things were, and they were quite extreme even for his time. I think everyone would agree.
Whenever that subject comes up on the internet, and every time you bring up Lovecraft on the internet with a mixed group, it will come up.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah. I actually talk about how it's kind of funny that Robert E. Howard in his letters, which we have reserved for posterity, talk about how Robert just wants to smack Lovecraft for his early sympathies about what was going on in Europe there, and he eventually did actually change his views and became a New Deal Democrat, which is going from a man who was extreme for his own time to just being about as racist for a man for his time there. Yeah. He married a Jewish woman, but it was Robert Bloch that convinced him that Jews were okay.
Yeah. There's a lot of contradictions in him. He was quite a complex character in some ways. Well, I guess everyone has their own complexities.
Oh yes, I understand that. There, I grew up in the middle of the lost cause sort of area of rural Kentucky. So becoming the diverse anarchist sort of person that I am there comes from a place of very long journey myself.
Right. That's cool.
Yes, it was like, it turns out that if you actually meet people, you might change your opinion. And,
absolutely.
Also getting into a lot of people like Brian Lumley and British authors and other people that expose me. It's like, oh, anarchy is awesome.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. We can always be counted on for that, can't we?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Oh, yes. But going on with the issue of diversity there, it started with, I was doing my planning out for what the post-apocalypse world would be like for Cthulhu Armageddon. And it actually just sort of was a stumbling into it by accident almost. And it was like, well, humankind is reduced to, I don't know, a few million people left on the planet completely, little tiny cities. And it's like, well, they're not going to be too worried about who is black, white, or Chinese American in trying to survive there. So it's all going to be sort of blended. And I thought that was an interesting idea. And I pretty much went from there. As for my other books, diversity-wise, I just generally try and feel like the world is a lot more diverse place than it is. And it adds a little character and you don't lose anything. But it means a lot to certain fans. Yeah. And I've only gotten a couple of nasty letters from fans who just like, I think I've actually printed out a few of them and framed them because they're so hilarious. It was like, yeah, I absolutely love this. Great action, great narrator, and great. But why are there lesbians? I give it 1 star.
Yeah, I had a very similar one. One of something I put out a few years ago. It was exactly the same thing. It was just like, oh yeah, really horrific. Love the body horror, but there's gay people. It's just like, what? Oh,
okay, yeah. Maybe it's the same guy.
Most possible, yeah.
He's a very busy guy because he's all over Facebook and on every. I mean, I'm convinced that half of this stuff you see on Facebook is bots or whatever it is.
Very racist AI. I just
Skynet was a bigot. Yeah.
Oh, yes. There was something very funny about writing Cthulhu Armageddon. I was mostly already through it there, but the Dark Tower movie came out with Idris Elba as Roland, and my defense on that one there against some of my friends who were like, the purists. You can't see me now, but I'm doing the finger wag. But yeah, I was like, to be Roland, Stephen King's ultimate protagonist, you need someone as an actor who could convince you that he is the most badass man who has ever lived. And, there's very few actors who can pull that off there. Clint Eastwood in the early time there. Idris is another one.
Yeah.
And I was like, the movie ended up being horrible because they torched Stephen King's wonderful anti-hero to being like, oh, I protect all the children, which if you've read the first Dark Tower is not Roland.
Yeah.
Yes, but going with that, I just thought he had this picture early still for the production of him in the cowboy outfit. And I was like, yes, this needs to be John in my head. And from there, everything else flowed there. And it's interesting that, some Lovecraft were like, oh, wow, you have a black protagonist. That's pretty cool there. And it put it in some interesting company just simply by being, he's there. It doesn't really particularly matter. And yet it does matter because He is a Black Lovecraftian protagonist, and we have other books that have done with that with much more. Well, let's just say they're better. Victor Laval's The Ballad of Black Tom, for instance, and Cassandra Claus. Yeah.
But it is. I don't know if you've seen all this story about, it's 50th anniversary of Dark Side of the Moon, Pink Floyd album.
Oh, that made me laugh the other day. Oh,
and I mean, most people will know that album cover, right? But in case you don't, it's a light beam of light going through a prism, so then it becomes like a rainbow prism, which of course is incorporated into the 50th anniversary logo. And they faced a backlash from certain elements for being pro LGBT.
For going woke.
I sometimes think, is it time to press the red button? Let me reboot.
It's very weird because I have to share this because this is one of those conversations that can only happen to an enormous geek, which was a conversation where in like one sentence I compared The Godfather, Star Wars, and Star Trek about about how the whole woke controversy kind of thing there. And I said in The Godfather Part 3, because this is that crazy sentence there, the Pope talks to Michael Corleone and throws a rock in a pond and says, it's amazing how you can live surrounded by something, in this case, Catholicism and the Italian people, and absorb none of it, which he's talking about, how the mob exists surrounded by Christianity, but is still a bunch of evil bastards. And then I used it to talk about fans of programs, because I'm like, Star Wars is anti-fascist kind of at its core, and Star Trek is so woke it hurts before it was popular. And yet you have people talking about, I can't believe they made Star Wars and Star Trek woke.
It's ridiculous.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a strange thing. And the other strange thing we were talking about the other day with that is, especially with Star Wars, you're against the evil empire and all the rest of it. The films are produced by the evil empire.
Yes. I mean, they were making Mickey Mouse Empire comparisons in the 80s, so yeah. Oh well. But yeah, definitely I love doing H.P. Lovecraft and doing my gun-toting adventures while also getting into the dark nihilism, because you can shoot deep ones, but you can't shoot a shotgun. Except he does, but we'll get it.
You can give it a go, but it won't get you very far.
There's a line for a t-shirt.
Yes, yeah.
There's a hierarchy kind of thing there. At some point, you just deal with the earthquake that is Cthulhu, or you don't.
But also in Armageddon, you had Nyarlathotep. I don't want to talk too much about the plot as such and give spoilers away, but it struck me that Nyarlathotep is probably the only god, maybe aside from Sarthogua, that people can actually speak to and interact with on a normal, inverted commas, level.
I think the only other one for me would be Hester in the King in Yellow guys, like for the Derlethian thing.
With Nyarlathotep, I definitely have got an incredible amount of fun out of working him into the various stories, because the idea is he's the messenger of the outer gods, but I'm taking that kind of literally, especially with the Dream Quest and Dreams of the Witch House, in that Nyarlathotep will stop his busy day of being an omnipotent, omniscient being far above even Cthulhu to chat with the little fleas and ticks that are running around infesting the earth. And part of the joke with the first book, where John takes the Necronomicon and does the ritual to invoke Nyarlathotep, is, congratulations, John, you have made the incredibly stupid decision to make yourself known to him, and now you done fucked up enough that he's actually interested in you. You've become his favorite ant.
I suppose that's what it is, isn't it? It's like ant farm, isn't it? We're just like an ant farm. Yeah.
It's like and I'm probably going to ruin it for some people by saying I drew a little bit from Picard and Q there.
Ah, nice. Yeah.
Oh, of course. Yeah, I can see that now. Yeah. And I mean, we've always said anyway, I mean, Hugh is just another form of Loki and all the rest of it, isn't it? The trickster god. Which,
yes.
Yeah.
I give Nyarlathotep in my books a sense of humor about this whole thing there. It's like, this is hilarious cow tipping sort of thing there, giving humans whatever they want and seeing how they destroy themselves, or Mi-Go or whatever alien races he's doing. One of the elements I did touch on that was more of the deeper thought is Nyarlathotep's masks are very often what mortal beings have decided are the gods, and it is his job to lead beings to the enlightenment of becoming the great old ones, which is kind of an interpretation of Randolph Carter's journey and attempts to become a greater and greater being that backfires horribly.
Yes.
Because no one ever said enlightenment was good.
That's true. You can have too much light, you know.
Yeah.
Yes, it's like the thing you become at the end of the road is not the thing you would want to be.
Yes. But then there's something you see. I was listening to a podcast about the Book of Enoch a couple of weeks back, and how Enoch is taken up into heaven and is shown various things, and heaven is absolutely terrifying because the walls are made of fire and the angels all have 27 eyes and all this kind of stuff.
Like shock-offs only.
Oh, yeah.
It's just like, all eyes and wings and teeth.
That was actually, I'm going to do a spoiler because it's just a short story there, and because maybe you'll get some people to actually check it out there. The true name of God, the answer that is at the end of the story that our protagonist is very carefully ignoring is the fact the inspiration for the Hebrew God and God of Abraham is probably Yog-Sothoth. And no one wants to admit that there, especially not what the sacred book would say and the beings that they summon with it.
Yeah. But that's nice.
Yes,
then that goes back again to our myth being just a shadow of the truth, whichever myth you want to choose.
Oh, yes. And there's a thing there. I totally am of the school of thought there that Lovecraft, and it's kind of funny because I'm religious in real life there, but I have a very good sense of humor about it. Lovecraft was totally making fun of Christianity when he created the cult of Cthulhu. After all, it's a dead god shared by all races on Earth that will eventually come back, destroy the world, and reward the faithful.
Yeah, when you put it like that.
Yep.
Same thing with the Dunwich Horror there. It's all about God and his son and the apocalypse.
Yeah. Although I was always a bit disappointed with Wilbur Whateley, to be honest. I thought he was such a good villain. I thought Lovecraft killed him off too quickly and quite easily. I want to see more Wilbur.
We didn't see him take his lumberjack shirt off and unleash his stomach tentacles, did we? That would have been brilliant. Have some of that.
Well, I got to admit, he kind of died a little lame there, as I said, the little dogs there. But I don't think there's any real Lovecraft villain who dies in a kind of epic fashion there. I think the most epic is also the kind of disappointing there because Cthulhu is just like standing there when he's hit by a steamship.
Yeah.
I mean, he Terminators 1000s right afterwards.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
He was like, what? You got to wonder what he was thinking. It's like, what the hell is that thing?
Perhaps he'd never seen one before. It'd not been up for a few thousand years, so the last time he saw was little blokes in,
kayaks,
driving little boats.
Yeah, I admit I also love playing around with some of the assumptions of the nihilism and cosmic horror in my books, even though they are punching back at the creatures of the mythos, breaking their hand in the process. But for instance, one of the stories in the Tower of Zal is they come across a Deep One hybrid village, and there's about to be attacked by a bunch of fanatics from the Deep One pure strain. Because you see, when Cthulhu arose in the Rising 100 years prior, the Deep Ones were all like, yes, it's time for the apocalypse, and we shall be raised to godhood. And then Cthulhu just kind of ignores them. Because the Deep Ones, it turns out, don't have any more insight or knowledge into his race than regular humanity, and they took that really personally.
Nice.
So they're trying to figure what if we eliminate all of the hybrids and the inferior bloods there? Surely Cthulhu would be pleased by this. And meanwhile, Cthulhu is like, yeah, I'm going to go move this mountain range over here.
Make a bit more space in Asia, shift that around a bit.
Yep. Takes a step back, squashes a village or two. I was like, oh, what the hell is that?
And obviously, as we're in Innsmouth at the moment, it's not the sort of thing we say too loudly. But when you look at it, there's no real connection between the Deep Ones and Cthulhu in that way. They're not spawn of Cthulhu, are they?
No, Dagon isn't. Dagon and Mother Hydra.
Yeah, they were created just the same as we were by the, from Shoggoth material or whatever.
Yes, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Definitely speaking there. And the case of the books there, maybe Dagon is a Cthulhu instead of being a separate entity himself there, and maybe they're worshiping it there. But yeah, it's all about the Deep Ones visiting O'Reilly, and they're like, oh wow, this is really cool. Let's just hang out here, and Cthulhu and his people are just slumbering away.
Get off my land. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I like that there, and I definitely think it's a way of exploring the kind of existentialism, cosmic horror there. Cthulhu and company are so far removed there. Something that's even an immortal fish man is still going to be just another slightly monkeyish creature. Yes, a fish monkey.
Yeah, as opposed to an ape monkey.
Yeah, I get too much into world building there because in my books I talk about how one scholar studies is like, clearly there was a root species that was altered by the elder things or encounters with the dreams of Cthulhu and thus mutated to the various branches of humanity. And then John is like, what the hell are you talking about?
Nice.
Because I'm thinking about all these from a Dungeons and Dragons world building perspective and historical, and my characters would not give a shit.
I was going to say, how much does your gaming influence your writing, and your writing influence your gaming?
Oh, I imagine that the two are kind of inseparable because I have a very wrong writing style that I would love to hear your opinions of as writers there, because I write like I DM. I create the characters and they're all trying to be as rich and detailed as possible that I know how they would react. Then I create the adventure, so to speak, and then I put my protagonist through the adventure and say, like, how would they act? And I just pretty much describe that. So I'm just kind of running it as a big adventure module where I'm playing everyone.
That's pretty much my own approach, to be honest. I tend to see things quite filmic. So in my mind, it's a movie. And again, it is that sometimes it's just thinking of a situation and having a character and thinking, what would the character do in that situation? And then that kind of leads you on to the next bit. So from that perspective, I said, especially with Cthulhu Armageddon, I thought it was very nicely placed in that you get these, I suppose you could call them set pieces, but it's not just a broken collection of set pieces. Sometimes sword and sorcery can be a little bit like that, I think.
Yes.
Then they went there and they did this, but you also get that character development or character interest between those set pieces as well.
Oh yes, I'm definitely a pantser rather than a plotter. There, well, I'm kind of both there. Same. Because but I'm continually surprised by what my characters do there, and sometimes they completely derail what I was originally thinking was going to happen there, because big dramatic twists from them are kind of baked into my writing style there. It's like, okay, this happens. It's like, would it be great if all of them died? I'm like, oh shit.
Glad you mentioned that, because that's exactly how I write as well. I mean, I'm complete pantser, and I tend to have these characters, and I basically start with a character and a situation and think, right, I want this to happen and this person to be involved in it. And then it all just sort of, but the character often ends up taking over completely.
Oh yeah,
yeah. I'm glad you said that, because that's exactly how I end up doing things.
Oh yes, and here's the thing: I prefer first person perspectives rather than third person, because I definitely like to keep myself laser focused on how one character is viewing everything, because that's just my perspective. Getting deep into the kind of thoughts about the weirdness and so on allows me to go on a lot of tangents. And I admit I'm going to be kind of push off at least a lot of my Lovecraftian fans there by saying I'm probably influenced by R.A. Salvatore there, and like the big long Dritz Jordan monologues. Yeah. It's like, they can be a bit whiny there, but if you're in Lovecraft, there's no reason you shouldn't be going on long tangents about the doom and of humanity and what it means when, humanity's not going to be making it through this there. It's going to take a while though. You got maybe 60, 100 years left, and like what you're going to do until then.
And again, that's where the interest comes in from, well, a reading and a writing perspective, is what's the character's reaction to that You know, I mean, because in a sense, that's real life, right? We all know what the end result is. We all know where we're going.
Yeah.
It's what do you do in the meantime? So I think, yeah, I tend to use a mix of first person. I think that does allow you to get inside someone's head a lot easier and to explore those kind of reactions.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely speaking that Lovecraft lends itself to an existentialist kind of viewpoint there. Lovecraft was, challenging the prevailing, everything's going to be working out sort of worldview. And that's part of what makes it good because, but, he didn't actually start with the view of being a nihilistic philosophical text on encountering the world and seeing how reality. He was dealing with the fact, our well-clocked world doesn't exist the way we think it does, and everything we knew about the world is wrong. Well, in the modern day, we mostly accept that, or at least the typical Lovecraft reader has accepted. Yeah, we are one planet in a billion, and relatively small there. But expanding on that to saying, like, well, what does that mean for us and how we relate to it? And monsters are still scary when they're biting your face off. Is, I think, the heart of most modern Lovecraft fiction. But I really like getting into philosophy of it as well. Even if it leads me to weird places like, the Shoggoths were completely justified in killing off the Elder Things. I don't know what Lovecraft was talking about, why it was so horrifying. Those little blob things took out those slaving bastards. And I'm not even the first one who came up with that.
Yeah, well, there is that perspective. They were an enslaved race, and I mean, we were talking about them recently, weren't we? With the Clark Ashton Smith story, the huge Shoggoth type thing on Venus. That I think people forget they're intelligent. I mean, we said like Michael Shane made such good use of that with Fatface and the Shoggoth Lord, the Shoggoth in human shape.
Shoggoth poetry, brilliant.
Well, not a spoiler. One of my characters in Cthulhu Armageddon finds out he's very much something similar to a Shoggoth and deals with, this is not actually a superpower kind of situation. This is a horrifying, what am I sort of situation. On the other hand, he's harder to kill, and that leaves more stories with him.
Well, there is that. See, every cloud has a silver lining. Every Shoggoth has a silver lining.
Yes. One story I haven't written yet, but I really would like to, was one that I was inspired by with the whole origins of humanity kind of thing there, is where, some humans end up trapped with a Shoggoth, and the Shoggoth is talking to them, and they don't understand what is happening there. And only right toward the end do they finally figure, oh, wow, Shoggoths think that all of humanity is one Shoggoth. It's just a fucking crazy one.
That's nice.
Nice.
It's like, Dave has gone around the bend there, and he's multiplied into 7 billion little segments there, and he's covered the planet. And we're just like, we need an intervention, Dave.
Oh, I like that. That's nice. That's an interesting concept, isn't it? We're like a hive mind kind of.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So we've spoken about the Lovecraftian literature there, but you've done a lot of other stuff as well. Do you want to give us a quick run through of some of your other work? I think there's like superhero. We mentioned the cyberpunk a little bit earlier on as well.
Oh, yes. Well, I've been writing about 10 years, and the benefit of that is I managed to churn out a lot of shorter novels there, and some of them are successful and some of them aren't, and all of them I've enjoyed reading and writing myself. So, that's the true heart of it, even if, I would rather be making more money off it.
Well, yes, there is that, isn't there? Yeah.
But, oh, yes. Well, it's like the Joker says, if you love something, never do it for free.
Yes. Very good.
Oh, yes. But a short rundown of some of my more successful things. In addition to Cthulhu Armageddon, I also wrote the Supervillainy Saga, which is an 8-book series so far of a guy who has always wanted to be a supervillain in the same sense of Henry Hill from Goodfellas. And he manages to finally get some superpowers when someone mails him a magic cloak that belonged to the Batman, Doctor Strange of the world. And here's the thing. He's now in his 30s and married and had a pretty normal life that this disrupts. And we see about the fallout of that because, he definitely wants to be a supervillain, but that throws his friends and family's life into complete chaos. And eventually, and all the wacky adventures that entails. It's a very, very snarky, hilarious sort of series there, totally relevant. sort of like Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Rick and Morty and Candy and all that.
Nice.
Sugar Rush. Yeah.
Do you see? I mean, do you think
Deadpool is a good example, or Harley Quinn?
I was going to say, yeah, Deadpool. As I say, do you think the superhero genre has changed quite a lot since the early days of Superman? Though Batman was always quite dark, wasn't it? Even back in the sort of 40s and stuff.
Oh, yes. Well, the thing about that, comic books were definitely an outgrowth of the pulps, and there was definitely a lot of feeding of one on the other there. The Shadow and Doc Savage are led directly to Batman and Superman. And, it's kind of funny there because I was only beginning my superhero books when the MCU was just starting, sort of, so to speak. There, Iron Man was out there, and I definitely got into the snarky verge there. And I think that's probably why the books did as well as there. Cthulhu Armageddon is a very successful book by most standards, and it has about 400 Audible ratings. And the Supervillainy Saga's first book has about 4,000.
Oh wow, that's good. Wow.
And in addition to those books, I think I have The United States of Monsters, which is a bunch of trilogies all set in the same world where vampires and werewolves have all come out. And they're very much funny books there. I think the vampire one is called Straight Outta Fangton.
Nice.
Yeah, it's about a poor black vampire working the Quickie Mart at the in the graveyard shift.
Awesome.
Clerks meets Blade is how I describe it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I did a twin. Yeah, I did a werewolf detective sort of series like Patricia Briggs did in this, except it was a weredeer. I was a teenage weredeer is what it's called. And the funny thing is, it's basically Twin Peaks, except the joke is that the protagonist is a Buffy kind of snarker.
Nice.
Who's taking none of this weird stuff seriously. And finally, if I was going to recommend a series, I would definitely recommend Space Academy Dropouts, which is kind of like the Supervillainy Saga in that it's Star Trek, except completely irreverent and constant snarking from just this lower decks kind of guy who just does not take any of this serious and somehow ends up captain of the ship that he really should not be of. That was ironically before Lower Decks itself, which pretty much is my book.
Yeah. Because I couldn't get into that. I watched a couple, and I'm a fairly big Star Trek fan.
I think you might. Well, then stick with Cthulhu Armageddon and the superhero thing.
No, I meant the lower decks. The lower decks I couldn't get into.
Yeah, well, I was going to say was the joke that John Oliver said was, it's like cocaine or Insane Clown Posse. It's not for everyone, but the people who do love it a life-threatening degree.
You mentioned Vampire the Masquerade there as well, and I suppose we've seen a quite a big change, almost a reimagining of Vampire as well, particularly I suppose Anne Rice led that, and then Vampire the Masquerade.
The Twinklies.
Yeah, and into Twilight. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I definitely love vampires, and I love the inter-characters there. But, vampires are also one of those things that you can just get wrong so very easily there. My perspective on vampires is one thing. Being a vampire should not be absolutely wonderful. It should be actually a pretty horrible curse, even if it does come with a lot of benefits. Like, yeah, you can have sex with anyone you want because you're an incredibly beautiful thing, but you probably want to kill your partner during the act. Something like that.
Yeah.
Yes, it's like I keep the massive disadvantages, because forcing your character to work around the fact you can't walk in sunlight is more interesting than just like, oh yes, I'm immune to all vampire weaknesses and super strong and can mind control people and pretty and rich. That was actually one of the weirdest complaints I had about the. I as a longtime Anne Rice fan, even through thick and thin, had my issues with the vampire adaptation on AMC, but my biggest issue was one that no one else was talking about in all the typical, oh my God, Lewis is black things.
Right.
And it's like, I mean, changing a plantation owner to a black pimp is a pretty big change there. But no, weirdly enough, my biggest thing was just like Lestat is incredibly rich and doesn't have a job and just like throws money at any problem. It's a major point that Lestat made Louis because he ran out of money, because vampires don't have jobs, so they change rich people.
Yep.
Well, this is it, and in a way, the old vampire stuff works because Dracula's a count, right? He's got a castle. No one's going to question him. Yeah. He can do whatever he likes. You take away that social structure, and you're left with a different proposition. How does he pay for the rent on his flat? You know,
that's what I liked about the Masquerade, is because you had the clan structure, so there was that support mechanism built into that sort of clans. It was almost like the Highland clan structure, like for the Jacobites and stuff like that.
It's very interesting because also Vampire the Masquerade was another inspiration for Cthulhu Armageddon, but in a different sort of way there. Because Mark Reinhagen, who is a friend of mine, because I actually have done some Vampire the Masquerade sort of things there. I made the arrangements for the reprinting of their novels for the modern ebook and audiobook era.
Oh, right.
Yeah. Yes. My good friends at Crossroad Press, who also do the Brian Lumley books and got me back into Lovecrafting and writing. But also do the World of Darkness books now, because I had friends in the Vampire Masquerade world, the publishing, and I put them in touch with them, and synergy happened.
Nice.
But what I was getting into is Mark Reinhagen, who created Vampire the Masquerade, had the idea of like, how do I do a vampire thing when they're just like, typical monsters, like I don't want to do the counts and so on. There's like, but and he had the idea, what if I combine cyberpunk class warfare, where it's like, we have the really rich people versus the really poor, and the really poor want to be the really, really rich, and aka reality. But instead of, doing cyberpunk arms and guns and so on, like Mike Pondsmith's Cyberpunk 2020, what if they were vampires instead, and they were the really rich vampires versus the really poor vampires? Yeah. And that kind of genre combination, I think, is a very good thing for an aspiring writer who wants to make their own mark there. It's like, if you make a combination of two things, you will come up with something new.
Yes.
It may not be good, but it will be new.
Yep.
Well, that's where the interesting stuff happens, when you mix two things together, isn't it, generally? Otherwise, you can get stuck into the same old sort of tropes and everything, I suppose.
Definitely.
I say, which is what Lovecraft did, because there's no ghosts and ghouls. Well, ghouls. There's no rattling chains, is there, in Lovecraft? There's monsters from Pluto.
Oh yes.
Yep.
Oh yeah, and he definitely puts his own spin on things there. There's a very good subtext to Charles Dexter Ward that Kerwin and his associates are vampires, but being vampires is the least of the weird things that is.
Yes.
I'm just thinking, in Call of Cthulhu, your party running into a vampire, that'd be, well, we've got a stake, we've got a crucifix, we're fine. It's kind of small beer, isn't it, really?
Yeah, it wouldn't even affect your sand roll, I don't think.
Yeah, it's like you need the elder sign there instead of a crucifix, friend.
Yeah.
So are you still an active gamer at the moment, Charles? What are you into at the moment?
Oh yeah, I definitely am there. I'm doing some detective. What was it? Cthulhu Confidential was a supplement that came out there. Yes, and I'm pouring over that there for my third Cthulhu Armageddon book, because again, the idea was doing a noir kind of thing there, and hilariously, that made me write a short story first, and I submitted that to a anthology that's being coming up soon, because one of the things I like is a certain group of people are doing like, oh, let's combine Vikings and Cthulhu, and let's combine the detectives and Cthulhu. I don't know who they are.
Yeah. I don't know who that'd be. Yeah. Yes, indeed. Yes. Yeah.
Don't know. Who could I be referring to?
I wonder. The Three Musketeers was one of my favourites so far, I have to say.
I had fun with that one. Yeah, I had fun with that one.
Yes, it's like Milady turns out to have prehensile hair, and
you can get cream for that, I think, these days.
Yeah. You can get cream for most things these days. Just go down and see your local chemist.
That reminds me, in Cthulhu Armageddon, I did like the mention of ghoul powder. I did like that.
Nice.
Ghoul powder.
Ghoul powder.
I see that in a little bottle in the Innsmouth chemist.
Yeah.
Oh, but being a goth, that just sounds like the sort of thing you get down at, like in the eyeshadow section or something. A bit of ghoul powder to go with your black lippy.
Yes, it's a shame I wasn't one of those 1950s or 60s guys who make their own fake Necronomicons. Like, yes, this is real magic. Please buy it.
Yeah.
I wonder how long that con went before anyone realized it.
Well, you can still buy Simon Necronomicons to this day, can't
Oh,
you?
yes.
So,
Yeah, there's about 3 or 4 out there, I think.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah.
Yes, the cults are printing fake ones to distract us. We must find the true original text.
That's a good. Yeah, there you go. There's a story in that, isn't there?
Yeah.
But something I spotted the other day when I was scrolling through Amazon was that somebody's done The King in Yellow, the play.
Oh.
I'm gonna have to get a copy of it. So it's just like,
Clearly,
yeah,
you're not
that's
doing
great.
it wrong if the audience is still alive.
This is exactly it, isn't it?
Is that the redacted version, though? Do you think? So it's just blank.
They added some action.
It's not got Act 2. It's not got Act 2. That's the one that's supposed to drive everyone mad, isn't it? Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's like, you really need the defying gravity musical moments.
So, have you got any projects you're working on at the moment?
Oh, well, like I said, I'm definitely working on the third Cthulhu Armageddon book, which after like 3 or 4 years was the basis. Because I thought of Cthulhu Armageddon as a standalone, and the Tower of Zal would be just because I had that idea. And now, it's a duology. Now it's a trilogy.
What's after a trilogy? What's a 4 or a pentology?
Quadrology.
Yeah, quadrology and then pentology. Yeah.
I just got to the point where I was writing my novella series, my Hollow Hills thing, and I got to the point where it's no longer a trilogy. I'm just going to call it a cycle. That way, I can just get away with as many books as I like.
Oh, that's good. That's good. A cycle.
Oh yes, definitely speaking there. I mean, I'm stunned by some authors out there. I'm considered very prolific by my associates there, and then I look on these guys who has like the 47 book series on Amazon Kindle Unlimited.
Yeah,
I'm like, are these books complete crap, or has this guy been writing since the 70s?
Yeah, it must be writing like 18 hours a day or something. But also that thing of as we've often said before, especially with the modern fantasy novel, that's like 680 pages long.
Yes. You can use it to club seals. Yeah.
Or deep ones.
Deep ones, yeah.
Yes, he was saved by the bullet by his copy of The Wheel of Time.
Yeah. Or The Stand. That was always the one for me. The bloody Stand.
Oh, yes.
Because me being me, I thought, if I'm going to read it, I'm going to read the proper one, and got the full director's cut or whatever it is he calls it. It's like a phone directory. Wow.
I'm looking at it like, why not just release it in 3 books there? I know it's not to be as impressive looking, but
yeah.
I just don't see the much point there. You'll make 3 times the money there, Steve. No, people will buy it. The
problem I have with books like that is I tend to read in bed, and if you drop them on your face, it doesn't half hurt.
Oh yeah, Stephen King's Dark Tower and The Stand were also influences on my writing there. At least,
yeah.
And I'm nowhere near that, but you can definitely evoke more with the apocalypse if you are willing to go into the dark, dreamy nature of it all.
Well, again, you've got that link to Nyarlathotep, haven't you? Because Randall Flagg and the Man in Black, they're all supposed to be avatars of the old messenger, the crawling chaos. So yeah.
Yeah, though my interpretation of the Cthulhu mythos is I always tend to avoid what Matt Davenport loves, making them just overtly evil, because, it's like the great old ones are allied with the Nazis. And I'm like, yes, you could do that there, but I guess I'd prefer them just to be so immoral and amoral kind of beings because they are divorced from human concerns there. You don't worry about what the cow thinks of you, and we're not even that level of useful to them. So they're doing their own thing, and they're innately hostile because of what they are rather than who they are.
Yeah.
The only cultists who can actually be evil and villainous are the people that are the most like us.
Yeah.
You can't be a villain unless you actually are capable of a moral reaction. And the Mi-Go aren't. I'm totally blanking on the story they first appeared in, The Whisper in the Darkness.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, good. The Mi-Go are actually trying. I always love the interpretation versus the common one that they're lying to our protagonist. No, they're making a sincere offer. I want to take your brain out of your head, put it in a cylinder, and take you on a magical Dalek journey of the universe.
Yeah, I've always seen it like that. It's just like killing with kindness thing. It's just like, this is a gift. What's your problem? I've always liked that interpretation of.
Don't you want to go in the Matrix? And I'm like, kind of, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, it's better than the alternative, being in that, crappy dark dungeon Hollow Earth.
Yeah, the flesh prison or a bone cage, an aging bone cage.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe I'm making myself reveal my zero sanity by saying like, okay, maybe I would not like to give up my body now, a little bit later, see how it works.
Yeah. Yeah. Wait till I hit my 80s and then you can have my brain. Yeah.
In some ways, it's not that different from having yourself frozen, is it? Like Walt Disney, wasn't it, and all the rest. Or in a big freezer.
Though to be fair, I also have my own long arguments on cryonics, saying, would it be awesome to be frozen and wake up and centuries later? Yes, man, but it's a scam. Eventually, the money will run out in 30 years, and they're going to toss you out.
Yeah,
if they haven't already, because who's going to know? Once all your relatives are gone, then
Oh yes, it's give that money to me if you're going to have yourself.
Okay, so, big thanks for coming in, Charles. Where's the best place people can get in touch with you or see your work on the internet? Obviously, we'll put all your links up in the show notes.
Oh, yes. Well, I'm on Twitter, Facebook. I have a Facebook fan club, and I have my author pages. I also have a review for Grimdark Magazine, which does some Lovecraft spinoffs there. And Before We Go blog.
Oh, right. Okay.
I love. I try and pass it forward with indie authors, and I think that it's always good to review and comment and recommend when you find something you like among those who kind of need it.
Absolutely. Well, I think, and as as we discovered, things haven't changed in that respect from Lovecraft's time, where everyone seemed to be very supportive of everyone else.
Yes, very much so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, now if you'll excuse me, I got to go draw the elder sign on my door and then sneak out the window.
See, you're the first guest who's we had Greg Johnson bought his own bolt last week, but you're the first guest who's going to sneak out early. So that shows you've definitely been here before. You're not going to wait for the inevitable.
Oh yes, yeah. That's why I also brought the shotgun.
Just give it 10 minutes when we go, and I'll get Zadok Allen to bring the ladder around the back for you.
Sounds good there. Oh no, it was a trick.
Yeah. That's not really Zadok Allen.
Yeah.
Well, huge thanks again for coming in, Charles. It's been great talking to you, and we look forward to seeing more of your work and reading more of your books. And we hope you can pop back again sometime.
Thank you very much.
Oh, there he goes. He's out the window. Is he the ladder? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah. He's gone.
All right. We've got a few minutes before the bus arrives. Shall we nip down to the hotel bar?
Oh, why not? Old Zadok was telling me the other day they've got some of the good stuff in from one of the ships.
Yeah. Yes, and you know what else is waiting down there for us?
Oh, it is, isn't it? Yeah. It's lurking under one of the tables, all bulbous.
Dagon's sack.
Cool. Right, do you want to have a rummage then, Rob?
Yeah. All right. So here we go. Let's see what we got. Oh, it's a bit sticky. There we go.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. Mary from Queensland asks, this is a good one. If you could set up a kaiju battle, which of the great old ones would you get to fight Godzilla? Ooh. Now, there's a good one.
Now, Cthulhu's going to be the obvious answer, right? Because that's the...
Well, a steamship kind of did him in.
Yeah, see, but it's too obvious. It's too obvious for me. I'm going to go, not an old one as such, but this is what I'm going to go with, because I'm thinking 1950s or early 60s style.
Yeah.
I'm thinking Swarm of Mego armed with ray guns.
So good and...
So they're around him, a bit like the King Kong with the planes, but they'd be like kind of moths or something buzzing around him, or wasps attacking him.
Oh, that's a good one.
There'd be like 100 of them or something like that.
Yeah, brilliant. I'm thinking Shubby, because you've got the 1,000 young.
Oh,
and the same thing. It'd be like the tanks coming in. There are all these like goat-legged tentacular monstrosities scuttling down the streets of Tokyo to take on Godzilla.
Nice.
And Shubby can just wave her tentacles in the air and direct traffic kind of thing. That's a great visual. Two great visuals.
That's two quite, yeah. If any budding filmmakers listening out there,
yeah.
There you go. Has anyone done that yet? A sort of like one of those weird wrestling mashups. There was a show I saw a little bit of. I don't know if it was on streaming or a dodgy streaming service, which was like Frankenstein wrestling the mummy and that kind of thing.
I can't remember what it's called, but yeah, there is that.
Monster, was it called Monster Fights or something?
Yeah,
like that?
I think it's Universal Monster Fights or something. But yeah, you get the Mummy versus Frankenstein and all that kind of stuff.
We're just thinking on a more cosmic scale.
Yeah, that's a great a celebrity death match with tentacles.
So, what do you think, listener? What would your favourite matchup be? Doesn't have to be from the Lovecraft universe, even. I mean, you know.
Well, actually, Derleth, in one of, I think it's the Return of Hastur, actually did pretty much a kaiju battle between Hastur and Cthulhu. You know, that's great. Somebody needs to do like an anime version of it. I think anime would be the perfect medium for this.
It would.
You know, or claymation.
Oh yeah,
you know.
yeah. Get a bit of stop motion going, perhaps. You know.
Yeah, a bit of Harryhausen.
All right, thank you very much for that question, Mary. We're getting some really interesting questions lately. It's good. If you want to send us yours, however strange or outre you may think it is, then just drop us a line at dagonsack@outlook.com. Now, you can also get in touch with us, of course, on our YouTube page. Welcome to our new subscribers. And I believe we've got a message on the YouTube channel come through as well.
Indeed, we did. Yeah, it was on, I believe it was my reading, one of my Christmas readings, my Abomination That Came for Christmas. It was a message from the Grinning Viking. There's no comments, no likes, 25 views, and it shows up in my recommended. Really good video, though. I wonder what sorcery YouTube is doing over there today. It's Dagon, mate. It's Dagon. Yeah.
As we said, our influence is slowly spreading. The tentacles of influence are slowly spreading. But I think as far as, you know, social media and how it works and everything else goes, I think I can make more sense of the Necronomicon, to be honest.
Oh, God, absolutely. The algorithms.
The algorithms and everything.
I actually watched an online seminar thing about Amazon algorithms. And seriously, it was like rocket science or something. I felt like my brain had been through the blender by the end of it. It was just like, I'm still no the wiser, you know. I
mean, I've got a member channel on my martial arts YouTube thing, and even just looking at the pages for that, it's mind-boggling. Right? And I know anyone who's put out a Facebook ad and has dealt with all that kind of stuff, or the new business suite or whatever they call it.
Meta's business suite.
I mean, maybe it's just our age.
Yeah, I think that may be it. I think maybe we're stuck in a generation gap somewhere, mate.
So another place you can get in touch with us is on our Facebook page, of course, the Innsmouth Book Club. And we had a nice little run of posts up there recently. Well, this was, I actually pinched the idea. I'll admit to pinching the idea. I saw it on something else. And the idea is you take a film and you make the film less intense by changing one word of the title. And we got some really great ones in. And we're just going to read a few of those out now, a few each. And we're going to finish with what we think was the best one. We don't really have a special prize to give. I'll tell you what, you get a night's free stay at the Gillman House in Innsmouth. How about that? There you go.
Some complimentary pilchards.
And a pillow turning service. They turn it over onto your face. But
yeah, exactly.
So here's a few. So we've got Mark Rankin said an American poodle in London, like that. Mick Gibson, this was a favourite of mine as well, gums. Then we had a chap called Tim Mendes came up with the Texas Chainsaw Manager. Our old friend Miguel Fliguer wrote in with the Dunwich Unpleasantness, very nice. Helen Jarvis gave us the Wicker Basket. And here's another favourite. Todd Howell said the hills have pies. Tim again with Jacob's Llama. Very nice. And Chris Halliday came in with a couple of great ones. I tidy up your grave.
Oh, nice.
And laugh again, which was quite odd because just 2 nights before we'd actually watched Scream and Scream again on the TV.
Oh, nice. Oh, a bit of a coincidence there. Yeah.
And then lastly, we've got Chris Miller with 13 toasts.
13 toasts.
That's a lot of booze.
Yeah. My brain went to bread. I've got that ridiculous toast museum on Route 66 in my head again. And the Elvis portrait made out of toast that's in some supermarket somewhere. Wow. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, and here's another 10 for you. We've got our old friend Ben Crawford with The Empire Hollers Back. Aaron Vleck with Meerkat of London.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, some bloke called Poyton with The Rising Damp of the House of Usher. Now, that one tickled me because my brain instantly went, oh, Miss Jones.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Rigsbeer,
yeah. And again, another one from Mr. Poyton was Tadpoles of the Black Lagoon.
I thought that had to be done.
Now, you see, I was trying to think of something from the Black Lagoon for ages. And Tadpoles. I don't know why I didn't think of that. We got one from Kevin Kaya. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. No Trouble in Little China. Alan Jarvis again with the Jam on Satan's Scone.
Oh, that's good.
That's a good one, isn't it? Mick Gibson again with Nightwear on Elm Street. Nightwear on Elm Street. Oh, God. Another one from Aaron Vleck, Dreams in the Kitsch House. I've been to several kitsch houses, or lava lamps and all that.
Yeah. That works.
Yeah. JDP Hudson gives us The House That Dripped Water.
I lived in one of those ones.
Yeah, I've lived in several, I think. Another one from Mick Gibson. We've got The Citizen Harry Kane.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Jay Rothermel gives us this frankly brilliant Star Kerfuffles.
Star Kerfuffles. There's been a bit of a kerfuffle.
Yeah. And I think the overall winner for me is from Shane Murray. The Devil Stays In.
Oh, isn't that great?
Oh, it's brilliant.
That is excellent.
Can't be asked to ride out tonight.
It's looking a bit cold out. The Devil Stays In.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thanks very much for that, everyone. And thanks, Shane, for the winner. As I say, your star prize is a free night hospitality of the Gillman House. So do let us know when you want to drop by. Okay, so as we say, that's on our Facebook page. That's somewhere else you can get in touch. And of course, you can also leave messages on our Patreon site. While you're on our Patreon site, do take a look at signing up to support the show. When you sign up, you get bonus content not only for the Innsmouth Book Club, but also for Strange Shadows, our Clark Ashton Smith podcast as well, which is going great guns at the moment. We've just hit 1,500 downloads on Strange Shadows. That's going really well. Nice. We're just coming up to the end of the first season on that. And of course, you also get a monthly copy of Innsmouth News. And as I said before, we've not got around to it yet. We're looking at restructuring our patron tiers as well. So we might be putting a poll out at some time to see what sort of things people want. Do they want merch or more bonus content or videos or whatever? So look out for that as well.
Yeah. Speaking of videos, you just uploaded yesterday the video of my recent excursion to M.R. James country.
Yes. That's quite a lot. It's about half an hour, wasn't it? I think.
Yeah, it was half an hour, yeah.
So
got some readings of excerpts in there over moody footage of trees. You know, I thought I'd go a bit arty with it.
Quite right too. Yeah, it looks very nice. Yeah. Yes, I do take a look at that on our YouTube channel. And of course, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel as well, so you'll never miss an Innsmouth excursion. We're going to be doing a few more this year. They tailed off a little bit last year, but we've got a whole series of those planned. So
yeah, that's partially my fault. I've got like about I've got about 10 of them that I just need to do the VO on. But I had technical problems, so they all got to the point where they all built up, and now it's just like daunting to look at my video folder.
I know what you mean. Yes. Well, I'm going to be doing one very shortly in the local village, which I was researching. Well, there's actually some family ghost stories there. I was speaking to my mother-in-law over Christmas, who lived in the village. So there's a couple of true life experiences. But I also found out there was a local vicar there, and this is going way back, who was a little bit of a rambunctious character, and he was known as Adam Ace, the Violent Vicar. Isn't that great?
It's either a pulp superhero or something out of Viz.
Yeah, it's like Paul Wicker, the Tall Vicar, wasn't it?
Yeah, Paul Wicker.
That's exactly what he sounds
Roger
like.
Melly, man on the telly, yeah.
Yeah, but Adam Ace.
Adam Ace, Violent Vicar.
I think one of us is going to be nicking that for
Alan Ace, a Violent Vicar versus the alien atheists from Mars.
There you go. It virtually writes itself.
Doesn't it? Yeah.
So do keep an eye out for that. We'll be getting more Innsmouth excursions out very soon. Okay, what do we got next time, Tim?
Well, next time we're going to be taking a look at the British Library collection of the weird anthology Queens of the Abyss, which is lost stories from women of the weird.
Ah, yes, because of course February is Women in Horror Month, right?
It is indeed, yeah. So we're going to be choosing a couple of stories out of that, and we've not decided on which ones yet, but we're going to be choosing a couple and going through them in our usual fashion.
Yes, some excellent stories in there, and quite a few I've not read before as well. So I think the editor is Mike Ashley has done a great job of getting an excellent collection together there. Yep. So we're looking forward to that. I hope you can join us. Thanks again to all our patrons and supporters and everyone who subscribes and listens. Tell everyone you know about the show. Help us spread our tentacles further. We've got lots of plans for this year. And big thanks to CT Phipps again, who I think I can hear a bit of a hue and a cry. I hope he got away all right.
He's probably hiding down at the railway station, and them weeds.
We'll pick him up in the bus on the way out. So there you go. All right. Thanks again, folks. With that, it's goodbye from me, Rob Hoyton.
And it's goodbye from me, Tim Mendes.